So I'd like to quickly give you a few examples of exemplary responses to some of the questions in your philosophy document. So this first one I'm going to show you is that very first question you had: how do primary and secondary diversity characteristics affect learning? And you'll see this particular student really gave me some depth when she answered that question. So she started out basically telling me sort of what the book says the difference between primary characteristics and secondary characteristics are. And then she really kind of delved into it from the lens of the online instructor and what the online instructor must do with regard to overall to primary versus secondary. And then she delved even more deeply into specific types of each. So here she delves into ethnicity and how it's shaped by cultural dimensions that influence social systems. So the power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism versus collectivism, masculinity versus femininity. So she really kind of delves a little bit deeper into that area. And then she really takes it one step further and delves into how an instructional designer or an online instructor can really accommodate the different types of learners. So she really gives me some good depth in this answer here regarding how these characteristics affect learning, and not only how it affects learning, but what an online instructor should do about it. So that's one example. Okay, so here's another one, another good example, but it is missing something that I'll point out in just a second. So this question was, what impact does motivation have on learning? And you can tell that she really delves deeply into the overall impact of motivation, the learning types, and how they fit into either unmotivated or motivated. And then she delves into intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. The one thing that she doesn't do in this particular example that I pushed her to do a little bit more deeply is to relate it to her own personal experience as a learner. So that would be one thing I would have her add in here related to this question. So it's not just about answering the question, it's about thinking about it through the lens of yourself as a student, through the lens of an online teacher or a hybrid teacher, and even through the lens of instructional design if you're thinking that way. So just remember that when you're answering questions, it doesn't always have to be textbook. It does need to include some personal context. Okay, and finally, this last example has to do with the question on scaffolding learning. And I'll tell you that she fleshed this question out with a little bit of me kind of prodding her for more information, but it really turned into a very robust answer by the end of the semester. So not something that I was looking for when she first answered the question, but by the end of the semester, she really kind of gave me a good look at what scaffolding is in an online course. So you can see she gives a little bit of an introduction to what scaffolding is, and then she really breaks it down by each type and talks about the different strategies that an online instructor can use within each area. So procedural, metacognitive, conceptual, and then she goes on to really kind of organize for herself what that type of scaffolding is, and then strategic scaffolding. So just another example, again, one thing I would have her do here if I were to prod her a little bit more would be to add personal context, and that just helps make the response a little bit more rich. So hopefully this has been helpful for you in seeing kind of what a really good example of a philosophy answer in your philosophy document looks like.